Mr. Crawford?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Okay, if I could have everyone's attention, it is 7:30, and I'd like to open our May 19, 2025 regular board meeting. If everyone would please stand to the Pledge of Allegiance, then followed by a moment of silent reflection, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, I turn to our treasurer, Mrs. Roberts, for the roll call of the board members, please.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mrs. Johns. Here. Mr. Kimmer.
Here.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Here.
And Mrs. Conrad Zinmeister is absent this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Roberts, for the roll call of the board members. You've all received the minutes of the May 5th regular meeting. Had an opportunity to look at those. Is there any corrections, additions, corrections, revisions to those? Not an entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Johns. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hoffman. Question. A question. I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. Adjustments to the agenda. I turn to Mr. Belville, sir.
No adjustments at this time.
Okay, no adjustments. Okay. Does move us into information discussion. Superintendent updates, Mr. Belville, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmer, and want to say thank you to our administration that is here, their presentation at State Schools, board members. It's always an event that look forward to, a little nerve-wracking, but our story is a great one and a powerful one that needs to be told, and it is worthwhile the time and effort and energy, and hearing the stories from our principals, things happening in the buildings truly rejuvenates me every year. You hear those things, and it's kind of that last little piece at the end of the year that pushes you into the summer and gets you ready for the start of next school year. So thankful for all of the presentations from our principals tonight. Great job. On our agenda, I have a few items this evening for your consideration. You can talk more about any one of them as we get to them in the agenda. Have a couple of contracts for consideration. There is one revision for Ms. Dalrymple's contract. That was an error on my part on the last board meeting. She was in her first year this year, so just put 1-year contract on there. Should have been a 2-year contract, so we approved a 1-year contract last board meeting, just changing that to reflect 2 years. So just a revision on that contract when we get there. We also have a policy revision asking the board to consider waiving a first and second reading. Earlier this year, policy GCBE-R we revised, and it just allows our administration the flexibility to award vacation days based on experience, or if there are certain circumstances that would require that. When somebody's on a 12-month administrative contract, they get vacation days, and we can decide how many vacation days they get once they start. We have a sister policy for our classified staff, and we meant to update both policies at the same time so that they read the same way for all staff members, and simply forgot to add the classified staff when we did the certified administrator staff. So that policy is on there for your consideration. Again, we discussed that at a previous board meeting. Nothing major. We've always had an M policy, but we're adding superintendent and or treasurer to both policies so that can happen. Also, bringing forward and mentioning in the state of schools, kind of bringing our energy conservation project full circle. The last part of the puzzle was the lighting on our stage. We're still operating with lights on the stage from when the school was built, and it's becoming harder and harder to find replacement parts, harder to find bulbs, so on and so forth. Because of some new classes we began offering this year in theater classes, the auditorium is being used daily. And it hasn't always been that way in our past, so those lights are on every single day. And so I feel like that this move is necessary, again, for that, to complete the energy conservation project, and because of the amount of usage the auditorium is receiving these days, we're burning through lights faster and faster. So we need to get those changed to LED. It'll be good for maintenance as well as our electric bill. So that is on the agenda for your consideration as well. Any questions on that piece of it? All right. We had planned this evening to recognize, we had our cross-country team at a board meeting earlier this year for their state championship. We had planned on acknowledging our girls basketball team this evening and their state semifinal appearance, as well as the band and all of our choirs for their performances at state. Unfortunately, the district track meet took most of those kids away, and we didn't want to bring a skeleton crew in front of the board, but I do want to publicly acknowledge those teams, our coaches, our sponsors, the amount of hard work that goes into achieving anything at the state level is quite a feat. So I do want to acknowledge those groups for their incredible years this past year. And lastly, I started off with the state of schools, but again, just want to thank all of our presenters this evening, and appreciate everybody's attendance. I say it often, or anytime I send a message out, but it truly is a great day to be a Falcon, and today's one of those days. So, any questions? That's it for me this evening.
Okay. All right, Mr. Belleville, thank you for the updates. Recognition of visitors. Anybody sign in? No. Okay. All right. Does move us to the consent agenda section, workshops and conferences. You'll see we have three. Amy Nolan to the OAS VO Essentials of Human Resources, July 23rd, July 24th, 2025, in Westerville, $334.40. Aaron Lowridge to the High Literacy Academy, June 12th, 2025, Columbus for $60, and Aaron Lowridge to the High Leadership Summit, June 11th, 2025, in Columbus for $60. Any comments?
Nothing major, I think, from Ms. Nolan. The biggest thing is a lot of parts of her job actually are some HR functions. It was the direct relation to payroll, and then over into our treasurer's role, we're working a lot with workers' comp, with FMLA, with labor laws, and just kind of all things that have to deal with how we compensate our employees. So this is a conference that I think will be really good. Just some updates in that world, just keeping on top of any changes out there, what some common practices are, and then also just the community building with the other districts that are there. We've always found that to be very helpful. So it's through OASBO, and there's always really good conferences. So that's what I have.
What's the acronym? What's it stand for? OAS.
Oh goodness.
Oh.
Ohio Association.
School business.
Yeah, I have it. Ohio Association of School Business Officials.
Okay.
So it's a development, or it's an organization that we belong to as part of administrators, and we do a lot of our workshops, a lot of our conferences. They push out a lot of updates. They coordinate a lot of the legislative meetings and conferences that we have been attending. They help to coordinate that. So it's a really good organization that we belong to.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, no other questions. We'll move to financial items. Financial items, I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts, please.
Okay, if it's okay, I'm going to be very high level in the financial and insurance recap since we're going through the 5-year forecast later, but I will point out just a few numbers as where we stand through the month of April. So starting out in our financial forecast, our financial recap. So far, we've received a little over $29 million for the year compared to $26.6 last year. We have spent $22 million versus $20 million. Some of our biggest changes is just a reminder, we pulled all of our ESSER salaries back this year from the grant back in the general fund. The other thing we've seen increases in, and I'll talk more about this when we get into the forecast, is in purchase services. We are seeing significant increases in our special ed and preschool costs this year. So again, I'll have some more details in that, but that's really where that swing is coming from. Overall, we ended the month at $24.3 million compared to last year at $23.8 million. And you will see kind of how that ties to some of our plans with transfers and where we think we're going to end the year when I go through the forecast. But overall, compared to our last forecast, because all of these numbers are still compared to the November forecast, we are on track and really where we expected to come at this point through April. If we jump over to our insurance, so far in health insurance, we have a cash balance of $3.6 million compared to $3.8 million last April. You'll see the biggest change in this right now is we have some very high claims come through in the month of April. $380,000 of that we are expecting to come back to us from stop loss. So we only pay the first $100,000 of any individual's claims, and then from there it essentially hits a second insurance plan. We pay it up front and then they reimburse us back. So that's why you'll see that difference in the month of April, because that money has come out. We have paid that in claims, but we are not receiving that. We're actually receiving in the month of May, but for the month of April, it's just off. Dental insurance, kind of trucking along right where we've been. We're sitting at $248,000 compared to $221,000 last year. So in a good spot with dental insurance. Any questions on either of those? I know that's very high level, but we didn't go off the details. Okay, the only other thing, we have 2 donations this evening. Very appreciative. We have $500 from Richland Circle Bar Farms for the Academic Booster Scholarship, and $500 from the Hughes family for the Academic Booster Scholarship. So obviously with this time of year, very appreciative of how that helps our students.
And we send out thank yous from the school.
We do, yep.
Wonderful. Okay. Mrs. Roberts. Comments from Mrs. Roberts. Financial item. If not, then I'll move to approval of the consent agenda. The motion to approve the consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent and treasurer. So it's been moved by Mr. Snuffer. I'll second that. Question. The question. I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Smeltzer?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Downs? Yes.
Motion passed, unanimous. This is the new business section. Administrator contracts, Mr. Montgomery. So a motion to approve a 1-year administrator contract for Riley Montgomery as a Bremen Elementary Principal, salary Schedule B, Group 4, Step 1, beginning August 1st, 2025, pending verification of all applications and material. Mr. Belleville, sir.
Yes, Mr. Montgomery, I think the best way the quickest impression made on me is we're going through the interview process and it was answering questions and very formal, exactly what you would think. Then we started talking about a club that he had started at school, a guitar club. And the energy, passion, love for kids, absolutely his eyes lit up. And when he started talking about those things that are about doing things that are good for kids, being involved in the lives of kids and helping them through various, social life issues, the passion is amazing. And that's when I really start getting excited. It's everything that we talk about as a district that, obviously academics are important and we want to do well on report cards and all those things. That goes without saying. It's all those other layers and pieces to the puzzle that you provide students opportunities to grow and you support them in ways that they know that they're loved and that they're wanted and all those type of things. And I think that's where his star shines the brightest, is all those things that kids will know that he is passionate about them, that he is there for them, he supports them, and then his expertise in the areas of special education, I think will be extremely beneficial to our staff, and it's going to be just a fun adventure watching him push into Bremen Elementary School and work his magic, and he definitely has his own thoughts. He's worked with Mr. Knott in the past, so he's familiar with that, but he will definitely make that his own and be a great asset for the building, the community, and most certainly the staff and students. So I tell you, I'm really excited to bring him in. I think he is the perfect complement to our elementary team. I think he will just fit like a glove with everyone else on the team, and I'm truly excited to see what he does. Mr. Knott, anything you'd like to say?
Well, he wears costumes, so that's always a plus. It was important for me as we had this conversation about making the transition and finding a new principal for Bremen that we really found someone who would appreciate the culture and add to the culture. That's Riley. And at Bremen, we really do try very hard to keep it simple and about the kids. And everything I know about Riley, his past, when we worked together from the pocket, what I've heard since he's moved on from there, tells me that he understands that importance, and it's going to be about the kids. That's also going to be about keeping it as simple as it needs to be, so we can do the right things for those kids and help the teachers. So I look forward to working with them.
Mr. Montgomery, anything?
I'm just extremely excited to get in there. I'm really passionate about making a positive impact, and I know that this is the next step for me to make the biggest impact that I can. And that will be the hardest part, is leaving the kids that I already have and telling those guitar kids, hey, it's over for now. But I'm really excited to work with this new group of kids, and I really want to get to know the tight knit community of Bremen and get to meet those kids and fall in love with those kids in this community. And so, and really be able to bring what I know from being an IS and being a teacher, to be able to support the teachers as well. That's what I'm excited about.
Okay, all right. Appreciate the comments, Mr. Belleville, Mr. Knott, Mr. Montgomery. One thought come to mind is Mr. John spoke at the State of the School a little bit ago of all the items that are on the agenda that possibly are hidden on the agenda, and I'm sure that was all covered with you in the way of fun, So thank you for the comments. Okay, all right. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve that one-year administrative contract for Mr. Riley Montgomery. So moved. Been moved by Mr. Hoffman. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Johns. Question. The question. I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. Mr. Montgomery. Okay, administrators, if you would like to go, you're sure won't be disrespectful. If you'd like to leave, if you'd like to stay, you're so welcome. But if it does, is your desire to need to go, please, it will not be disrespectful to step out. So, okay. Okay.
Thanks, guys. Good job tonight.
All right, thank you.
Does move us to 5.2, the revision to the teacher contract. Motion to revise the one-year teaching contract for Veronica Dale Ripple. Yay. As elementary intervention specialist issued on April 28, 2025 to a 2-year teacher contract. Salary Schedule A, Bachelor's Degree Step 2, beginning the 2025-2026 school year. Entertain a motion, please. The movement, Mrs. Johns, I'll second that. Question. I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous. 5.3, motion to approve personal service supplemental contract as presented. Board member C, there's a list of 1 through 6 there. If there's no comment, I'd entertain a motion. Entertain a motion to approve the personal service supplemental contracts as presented. Been moved by Mr. Smelter. Would there be a second?
One second.
Second by Mr. Hoffman. Question. Turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes. Motion passed unanimous. 5.4, substitute classified list. Motion to approve that substitute classified list as presented. There's an attachment all board members have in front of them. No question. The comments I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Hoffman. I'll second that. Question. I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous. 5.5, an educational trip, boys basketball. Motion to approve John Halbert to take the boys basketball team to a team camp at High University June 6th, 7th, and 8th.
This is a regular trip that we take every year.
Regular trip. All board members have the attachment in front of them.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Smeltzer. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Johns. Question. I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes, motion passed unanimous. 5.6, Chartwell's contract. Motion to approve the Chartwell's contract renewal as presented.
This is basically the same contract that we have had since 2023. It is just looking at the prices that we are charged for our administrative fee and our management fee. You can see I've listed the prices here, and to be honest, they actually have not increased significantly. They have been in line with the consumer price index. So the consumer price index for this coming year for urban consumers is 3.6%. This is going up 3.5%. So right in line with the price index increase. Yeah, that's really the only change that we have for this.
Okay. Thanks, Mrs. Roberts, for the comments. Entertain a motion to approve the Chartwell contracts renewal as presented. Been moved by Mrs. Johns. I'll second that. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous. 5.7, motion to approve the waiving a first and second reading of the policy revision of board policy PDDR and approve the changes for the policy as listed.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Hoffman. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smeltzer. Question. The question, turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes. Motion passed unanimous. 5.8, resolution for lighting replacement. Motion to approve the resolution 2025-02, authorizing lighting replacement in Robert Crokia Performing Arts. Entertain a motion to approve, please. Well, you see the attachment in front of you, all board members as well. Sorry.
This is a project that we had budgeted for over the past year or two, I believe.
Okay. Been moved by Mr. Smelter. Would there be a second? Second that? Question. Question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes.
Motion passed unanimous. 5.9, the May 2025 5-year forecast. Mrs. Roberts.
Okay, so this evening I have two attachments that are in the board agenda. The first is the forecast itself, and then the second is a 5-year capital improvement budget. For board members, I have given you paper copies of both of these, just sometimes it's a little easier to manage. The forecast itself is actually pretty long, so what I'm going to do is similar to what I've done in the past, is in the packet that has the forecast on the front, jump to pretty much almost the very end and jump to page 23. There's a lot of details up front, but what I feel is it's always easier if you kind of look at it in total, and I'll walk you through each line. Essentially, all the pages leading up to this, there's one page per line of the forecast. So what I'm going to do is I'll walk you through at a high level, but it's probably easiest just to look at the forecast itself. Please stop me along the way if there's any questions. One of the things that obviously, and I know Mr. Bevel referenced it in the state of schools, but there has been a lot happening, a lot of change, and to be honest, still a lot of unknown in the state forecast for public schools.
That's what I was going to ask ahead of time. Do we have any updates or any?
Nothing official.
The only thing we know is when voting will take place. The final amendments for the Senate version have been turned in. I expect hearings early June. I believe there'll be a vote maybe like June 9th on the Senate version. Then it will go to conference committee. And I think the goal is to get out of conference committee and to the governor by June 20th. I think that's the timeline right now. And then the governor has till June 30th to sign.
That being said, what I kind of want to do with this forecast, since we do have a lot of unknowns, is we are going to, for right now, move forward with as much as we can of what we know so far. What we do know is that even some of the things that are out there and being proposed and that we have heard, there's a lot of new concepts, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new things that will completely change the way public schools are forecasted. What we also know is that some of those ideas contradict each other. So there's multiple layers of complexity when we really look at that. So I think what our best bet at this point is to move forward with what we know. Our district is still in very good financial shape. Move forward, and then once I get toward the end of the forecast, we're going to talk about some transfers that I'm proposing. What I think is that we don't have to officially move on any of those transfers at this point. There's a lot that could swing this forecast by multiple millions of dollars, and that really could impact transfers. So there's things that I think that this is our plan, and this is where it'll tie to that capital plan. That's the second attachment, and I'll talk through that. But we do not have to officially make those moves quite yet. However, we have the plans in place and we're ready to go so that as soon as we know anything, really that June 23rd board meeting is the last board meeting of the year. We may not know all the details just based on the timelines, but I think we'll know enough to make some of those transfers and move forward if we decide. I think we're in good shape. And to be honest, all school districts are in good shape. Everybody has to turn a plan in by the end of May, or a forecast in by the end of May. I feel confident in where the numbers that we know You know, I feel confident in looking at our taxes, our income taxes, the actuals. We have a good hand on our expenses, so we know what it takes to run the district, and then we can go from there. So, that being said, you know, over the next, 5 weeks, we'll continue to, you know, participate in the discussions, participate in the calls, really stay on top of, okay, what does that mean for our district? I will say I have more forecast scenarios for this forecast than I've had for any forecast in the past, because every time, even today, we came up with a new scenario that says, okay, well, what if this would happen? What does that do? So we kind of know, you know, based on what levers are pulled, we have a feeling of what that would do to our district and what that means for next steps. But overall, I still feel confident we're in good financial shape. It's one of those things that this is why you want to be in the financial shape we are, so that we can weather the storm. We can ride it out, and we can make sure that we're making the best decisions for our students, for our community, for our teachers, our staff, and go from there. So, any other questions like that before we? Okay. So, the other thing I wanted to do, just to kind of level set the ground, is when I presented this forecast in November, I came in with a very different strategy in November, and now I feel like this is even a different strategy again. In the past, I have always predetermined where we thought transfers needed to be, and I preset some of those transfers saying, okay, here's what we are anticipating, here's where we need our cash balance. When I came in November, I said, hold off, let's wait until we decide on projects and then transfer money out of our general fund as we have a project approved. You will see that from November to now, this May forecast, that has changed again. Part of that is dealing with some of the cash balance challenges that we are hearing that are out there. Now, we're also hearing that those could increase and that those could also totally go away. So we're prepared either way, and we have a capital plan that ties to this forecast dollar for dollar. But those are some of the main differences from November, just in the type of forecast that I'm looking at. So overall, the big things I want to talk through are our revenue and kind of each piece of the revenue, and then where our expenditures are going, and then I'll finish out with transfers that tie to that capital plan. So starting out just from top to bottom, when we look at our property and public utility taxes, those are about 27% of our revenue. So far through 2025, we have actualized, so we know exactly what we are receiving in our property, our PUP taxes, and our income taxes. So those are all actual numbers. We will not receive any more for the balance of this financial year. Our unrestricted and restricted grants, this is our state aid. So that is lines 1.035 and 1.040. Both of those lines, the biggest thing that we do think, which we would love to change, but right now this is actually showing a 0% base increase cost. What that means is that the state formula for many years was holding one cost of what it would cost to educate our students. Going into 2024, the state actually updated that cost to use 2022 costs. Since then, we had been using costs that were several years old. It was projected that those base cost increase would increase every other year. So every year, so it would increase going into 2026 and then again in 2028. One of the things that we have heard going through the forecast is that those increases would actually go to zero. That is one of the biggest, so far in this forecast, that is one of the biggest impacts on this forecast. We actually lose $4.6 million over the 5-year forecast by not having those increases. A lot of the meetings and a lot of the calls and everything that we have been on, and I do agree that the formula that we are in today does not work if you do not continually update that cost increase. Basically, you're using an old number and you're letting everything else increase, but you're not increasing the cost of students. Since we are now funded based on the number of students that we educate, every single student we get a certain amount of money on. And if you don't continually increase that, your formula stays stagnant. And you can see that here. So we are impacted by about $4.6 million. The other thing that this forecast has in it is this was the first year that we participated in CEP, the Community Eligibility Provision. That's where we're feeding all of our students breakfast and lunch for free. 2025 was the first year That funding is carried through 2028. We do receive additional restricted state funding for that. So you can see in 2024, we were at 959,000. In 2025, we jumped to 2.2 million. That is because we have determined that we are feeding 100% of our students for free. You'll see that that level of funding continues through 2029. Right now, one of the variables in this is that's actually a 4-year program. 2029, I do not know at this point, if we would assume that the federal government would keep those percentages the same, but there is some risk in that 2029 number. That number may need to come down if, for whatever reason, that changes and that CEP program is no longer there. But this is assuming that we will just continue that for now. Let's see, if we jump down to line 1.06, other operating, this is the main piece of this is our interest. This is the interest that we are earning from Star Ohio and Meter, and then also the County Bank. We have almost $35 million invested right now. Most of it is in long-term investments, and long-term for schools is 2 to 5 years. We have about a little over $2 million invested with Star, and those investments are 1-day terms, so they basically reinvest themselves every day. It's essentially like a high-interest checking account because we can get to that cash quickly if we need to. Having $35 million invested really helps us, and you can see over the past few years we have drastically increased the amount of interest that we're bringing into the district. We had about $1.2 million last year, and I'm anticipating that we will meet that same amount this year. However, based on just markets and interest rates, we do think that will go down slightly over the next few years, but we could have a little bit of opportunity in those numbers if the market holds where it is. The other thing is if we do end up having these cash balances and these cash caps, that could decrease some of the cash that we are receiving, and therefore we would no longer have as much cash to invest. So it would hurt the income that we're bringing in from interest. But right now, interest is holding strong. We're working, all the time with Meter of just a strategy of, okay, what's our capital plan? What's our plan over the next 2 to 5 years so that we can make sure we have cash on hand as needed, but also invested as long as we can to hold on to those higher interest rates. Any questions on revenue before I jump into kind of the next part of expenses? Okay. Okay, if we jump down into expenditure starting at line 3.01, you will see this is where all of our salaries sit. As a reminder, I've said it over and over, but it's different when you're seeing it on paper. This is where our ESSER salaries came back for 2025. That is why we had that big jump from 2024 into 2025. We're also in the second year of our third year of our teacher agreement. So these salaries essentially just project out over the next few years where we think our salaries will be. This is also showing some increase in severance as well as supplementals. We've talked a lot about the CCP stuff and CCP classes and expanding that. Those are some increases in our supplemental costs, so that is reflected in this forecast. Employee benefits goes right in line with salaries. This is basically all of our health, dental, vision insurance, as well as retirement benefits. You will see that it increases in line with our salaries that go up. This is about 20% of our costs. So the biggest thing here that we can really affect is that we can really plan into is our medical insurance. Year after year, we've had 0% increases except for the year coming out of COVID. This is projecting us to go up 8% for fiscal 26 and then 10% for every year after. Just being transparent, hopefully that 10% is a cushion and that we would not need that, 10% on top of a 10 on top of a 10. However, that is something that we have always planned in just to ensure that we are in shape that in case we were to meet that, that we have that at least built into the forecast. But like I said, this year we're estimating roughly about an 8%. We will come to the table on June 9th to get our insurance rates approved. We are hoping to have them for this board meeting. However, the UHC really needed some April numbers to get some of those additional information in order to get some of that back. But right now it's looking around, some increases that we would offset between our two plans. Our medical plan A is very, very expensive. Our claims are very high, and it's actually running at a loss. Medical plan B is actually doing pretty well. So we're looking at just how we're going to combine those numbers in order to make sure that we are funded correctly going forward. Purchase services. You will see a pretty big swing in this forecast in purchase services compared to our November forecast. I mentioned it earlier in the April recap, but we are seeing some major increases in our special ed costs. We have more students that are, going out to some of the special ed schools, and they're young students. So they will be with us now, through school. So I am anticipating an increase in that cost for this year, and I did hold it for the balance 4 years of the forecast. We're also seeing an increase in preschool. So as we look at both of those and really looking at, that is a shift from where we've seen some of that in the past. It's almost a $3 million increase in expenditures from November over the 5 years. So we are really being hit. If you think about that, we're really taking on, okay, we're losing $4.6 million in revenue, and then also seeing an increase in this purchase service costs or some of our special ed costs of almost $3 million. Right there is a $7 million difference of just those two line items that they're drastic. They're drastic to our 5-year forecast. If you jump down to supplies, the biggest change here is we had actually slated in a math curriculum purchase for fiscal 26. We are anticipating that we will be able to hold off on that, similar to science of reading. It's a very similar concept, but for math. We are not anticipating needing that at this point for fiscal 26. However, I did add that back in for fiscal 27 and 28. As of right now, it looks like it would need to be a K-12 purchase, so it will be a significant curriculum purchase. We have this broken out over 2 years, but knowing that that may all slide into 1 year, but really working with eShowing to make sure that we are planned for that and ready to go, but we are pushing that from 26 into 27. So you will see, compared to November, that supply cost came down about $500,000, and that's really due to that curriculum purchase. Okay. Any questions? Those are our major expenditure lines. Okay, the next piece of this that I want to get into, I'm actually going to do a little bit backwards because I'm going to explain kind of how I'm getting to some of these numbers. If you jump down to the blue line of the forecast, line 7.02, that is our cash balance line at the end of the year. I'm projecting our year to be at $16.9 million. We have had it as a goal as a district for the past few years to hover around $17 million. Interestingly enough, that $16 million, depending on if this cap comes into play, the 60% cap is around $16 million. We also feel that $17 million, we can confidently, it's a little over a 200-day, we can operate for about 200 days. If we were just to cut off all income, we have a little over 200 days of operating income on that. That's scary. But at the same time, I think that we are in good shape compared to a lot of districts that probably have a lot fewer days. That being said, and the reason I said I wanted to walk into this a little bit backwards, is the other thing that we have done, we have really looked at, okay, where are our buildings sitting, where is our district sitting, and what are the things over the next 5 years that we think will be capital improvements that are significant costs. We have talked a lot about, for example, we know that all of our parking lots will need completely repaved. So they will need milled down, completely repaved. We got a quote for this about a year and a half ago, and it was over $1 million. So that's something that right now we're projecting at $2.2 million. So I'm using that as an example for things that we know are significant capital improvements that we are anticipating within the district that we need to transfer money from our general fund into these capital funds. Right now, in 2025, I'm projecting that we could transfer $5.8 million. What that's made up of is, in last forecast, I had $886,000. 500 of that goes into PI. We have a PI levy, a permanent improvement levy. We're generating about $380,000. It's just not enough anymore for that to sustain all of our permanent improvements. Buses alone are continually increasing in cost. So I'm supplementing that with a $500,000 increase into our permanent improvement levy. We're also anticipating that because we moved into the CEP, the breakfast and lunch for free, we anticipated having to transfer funds from general fund into food service. We've transferred $200,000 this year already, and I'm anticipating a $300,000 transfer each year after that. Basically what happens is since we're feeding all of our kids for free, you're only getting reimbursements for pieces of them, so we have to essentially transfer money to keep the food service fund going, but it's offset by the increased state funding. It's a little hard to explain, but does that make sense? So we have to transfer money, but it's being offset by increased state funding, and all of our students are eating for free. That leaves a $5 million. So I just went through 886,000. That leaves $5 million. Of that, if you want to jump over to your the packet that has the 3 other pages. We have 3 different capital improvement funds. We have our permanent improvement fund. We have our OSFC fund. That is the fund that since when we built all of our buildings, we're required to maintain our buildings. And then we have our 070 fund that is our separate capital improvement fund. So we essentially have 2 capital improvements and a maintenance fund. What you will see is that there's at the top of these, it shows what money we have coming in. So it's essentially a forecast for each of these funds. I'm showing our revenue and then our expenses, and then the line items down below are all the details of expenses. You can see really starting out at the beginning, Fund 003, our permanent improvement. This is where every year we purchase our buses. This is where we work with maintenance, and we're on a rotation of lawn equipment. So our mowers, our Batwing mowers, our zero-turn mowers. Essentially, we have 2 years of just kind of regular years within maintenance, and then we have an expensive year that we really say, okay, we're rotating that big equipment. This is also where we are sealing and repairing our parking lots. So you'll see that costs us about $120,000 a year. That's completely separate from the separate line item of the over $2 million that I mentioned before. So that is where you can see I have $500,000 going into this permanent improvement fund every year in addition to the PI levy that we receive. So that's the $500,000 of that transfer. If you jump to the next page into our Fund 034, this is our maintenance fund. This is really where we have our preventative maintenance contracts. We maintain our gym floors. Anytime we need replacements within a classroom, if it was an item that was originally in the classroom when the buildings were built that need replaced, we can replace them out of this fund. This fund is very strict in what we can spend out of it. So anytime we can use this fund, we are using it because it has a very limited range of what expenses can be. You'll see though, really the only revenue coming into this is the $500,000 that I'm required to transfer every year, about that $86,000 plus some of the equalization that we receive from the state. Our biggest fund that we're looking at right now and where the balance of these transfers would be proposed is into our Fund 070. This is our capital improvement fund. So these are the things that are specific projects in the district that we would look at. And essentially what we're saying is, okay, what are the items that we're anticipating that we either need to replace or just maintain over the next 5 years? You will see kind of the last, in the green section, transfer from general fund. You will see in fiscal 25, I have $5.3 million. That is where that is coming from, of that transfer that's in the forecast. So that's how this is timed. You will see then next year I have a $3.3 million transfer, and then a $300,000 each year after that. We also transferred $4 million into this fund last year, and that was to pay off the debt from our HVAC controls. So we essentially took a loan, we leased the money and paid for the project with the money that we borrowed, but then we transferred the money from our general fund in order to pay off that debt. We are still investing that money with Meter, which is where we're receiving a pretty high interest rate on it. The loan itself was only about 3.1%. So it helps us because we can continually use that cash and keep that cash on hand for the 10 years that we need it to.
I was kind of going to that because can we still invest the money that's in this fund?
Yes, all of this money is still invested. So
Okay, good.
there's kind of two separate, like, if you think about it, this is our financial plan on paper, and then we have our cash plan that is either in the bank or is being invested. So all of this money is still invested. We carry around $5 million at any given time with Benton County Bank. Other than that, the balance is all invested, either with Star Ohio, with the real short-term investments, and we use that, again, we use that kind of like a checkbook. We put money in, take money out, just as needed. We really use that a lot of times when we know we have our debt meetings coming up, because we have debt meetings in June and December. So we're really using that in order to make sure we have money there. And then the balance is all invested with meter, and those are the longer term investments. The few things in fiscal 25, if you go down to the details below, you'll see a food service transfer of $300,000 and a direct debt transfer of $1 million. Up until about 2 years ago, we were transferring 0.75% of 1% of our income tax into debt retirement. We stopped transferring that because once you transfer money into debt retirement, you can't get it out, and we are very close to the amount of money that we need to pay off the debt. However, I had always said coming into that is I was holding off on the last $1 million in the chance that we were ever going to pay that debt off early. I didn't want to have too much money sitting there and then have it stuck in debt retirement. At this point, though, we are looking to transfer $1 million into that debt retirement. So this wouldn't come into 070, but showing that final $1 million, and I would get the exact amount of what we would transfer into debt retirement. That's basically the final debt from building all of our buildings. So that's kind of where that's what that's still living from. If you jump into fiscal 26, you will see that we have some facility improvements that we're anticipating, about $3 million. The library renovation that Mr. Belleville spoke about, some property renovations, some classroom renovations with some new door locks, some armor just on some of the doors that don't currently have it, and then some IT numbers that are areas that we need to maintain. A lot of our IT investments are actually we can do through E-rate, so we'll get money back, but they're still expenses at the very beginning. You will see that as we get to the end of this, the ending cash balance for this plan in fiscal 29, right in the middle of the page, is just under $1.5 million. And basically what that is the $4 million we transferred last year, the 5.8 that we were proposed to transfer this year, and the 3.8 potentially transferred next year. All of those numbers tie to these transfers so that our forecast is completely timed to our capital improvement plan. That being said, over the next 5 years, that significantly impacts our general fund because we are proposing to transfer about $13 million out of general fund into our other capital improvement. We do not have to make those transfers right now, but I do need to show that if we are suggesting that in a forecast, we need to show that we have a plan for it and there's a reason for proposing it in a forecast. So those all have to come to the board for approval before anything is done. We would obviously have very specific projects in mind before those transfers are made, but that is how that would all tie together, really in order to make sure we're maintaining our buildings, making sure we're maintaining our grounds, our parking lots. It's looking at, we have 3 more roofs that we have not replaced, so the high school, the middle school, and our activity center. We replaced both elementary building roofs in the last 2 years. Already almost 2 years. But we have not replaced the other roofs. So it is anticipating over the next few years. Hopefully we wouldn't need to do full replacements, but at the same time, knowing the age of the roofs, we do need to at least plan for those projects. Yeah, the transfers would help us get to a cap if that does happen. One of my biggest things with the cap is it's very hard to place one cap on all districts. We all have different ages of districts, different ages of buildings, different priorities, different maintenance needs. To just have one cap across all Ohio districts is very challenging. you know, in a district like ours right now, we have significant capital that could be tied up in everything we just talked about. So in order to say, okay, this cap is out there, that's a challenge. You know, we have been really looking at and planning to make sure that we're ahead of the game and we're proactive with the money that we would need. And all of a sudden then if the state comes in and says, nope, you're capped, that changes the strategy and that changes, you know, how we work with our community. It changes the priorities of levies. It changes, you know, the whole strategy that I think we've had a solid strategy in place. And to self-fund a lot of this, that starts to, you know, have to come back up in discussion and to really look at that.
One more question. In the capital improvement fund, is it, we have 10 years to?
You have 10 years
use it?
to spend it. You don't
Spend
have to spend it 100% down, but you have to be using it.
Is that first in, first out then? I mean, money that,
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you also, if money in capital improvement, the one reason we like an 070 is when you put money in 070, if you were to need to move it back to general fund, you can.
okay.
If you put it in permanent improvement, it's in permanent improvement and it cannot come. I mean, there are ways to get it out, but it's not. Permanent improvement, what we can do is, if a need were to arise in the district that we are not anticipating, and we are to need to move money around, it's board approval, but we can do that. That is the benefit of an 070 in our capital improvement fund.
No, it doesn't have to be spent down in that, to me, as long as we pull up or something else.
Correct, correct. So there are some advantages of the 070. You'll see a lot of districts right now when we're talking about caps. A lot of districts are using 070 because we have planned for capital projects that before, in November, I said, nope, we're not going to transfer until we know what that cap, until we know the auditorium project. Here's the cost, we're going to transfer that amount of money. That was the plan in November. Now, when we start to look at it, it's a little bit of a different strategy, but we also know that we need that flexibility for the future. Any other questions on the capital? I have one other thing that I want to run through, but any other questions on that capital piece before I go on? Okay, the other piece that I want to draw your attention to that you know, that we're really looking at is actually in fiscal 2029. So the last column of the forecast, it's 2 lines above essentially the blue line. So one of the things and one of my goals as a treasurer has always been to have a balanced budget, to not overspend. You'll see, obviously, in fiscal 25 and 26, it looks like we're overspending by $582,000 and $411,000. That is simply due to the transfers. Our operating budget is not overspending. It is because we're transferring money. We are not. It's not just the daily running of the district that is causing us, you know, that to be off balance. However, by the time we get to 2028 and 2029, as the way our forecast sits today, we are deficit spending by $574,000, and then my biggest concern is in 2029, $2 million of deficit spending. To me, as a treasurer, I am not comfortable with it. I do not think it is right that we go into a year and that we say, okay, we're deficit spending. Our cash balance of $15 million, if you deficit spend by $2 million a year, that is, you know, goes to 13 million, 11 million, it decreases very, very quickly. My biggest concern with that is the true operating costs of the district. We don't have, other than the 886, I don't have significant transfers in that year to offset that. I'm comfortable with 25 and 26 because I know that's our decision with transferring that money. By the time we get to 2029, we are definitely spending by $2 million, and that is the true operating cost of the district at the current funding. If we get back to our forecast and that, you know, they have some increases and they implement the funding and that helps them. However, we are still in that area, and I know we always look at them and say, okay, that's 5 years out. However, that is the true major expenses of the district. You'll see, you know, we have some major expenses in supplies. Those are curriculum purchases. Our special ed, like I said before, special ed is spending this $3 million over the 5 years. So when you start to absorb some of those numbers, and then we look at 2029, that is really where we start to see that impact of really what that does of just daily operations. That's how we're looking at. You know, really, I've stewed over this over a while of how do we do that? How do we present that? I think it's something that we really need to be cautious of. We need to look at it, with all of the major decisions. And then continue, what we're doing to really say, okay, here's what we think is best for school funding, here's what public schools need. If we're going to have a formula, you need to fund the formula as planned. All of those things would significantly help us, and they would really help, turn the district so that we are back to a balanced budget. But as it's sitting today with no increases, that's where, we're sitting at $2 million in deficit.
It's coming no way.
I knew that was going to be the.
I mean, we kind of used to that. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had to plan and try to work toward a process that would get us in a better shape by that fifth year. That was
Right.
kind of.
And I think that's to me, the biggest concern is when you start to look at, okay, how do you start to, how do you save $2 million? You don't save $2 million just overnight by cutting a few, paper and all those. We really need to strategize, and we really need to say, okay, what are our goals? How are we looking at this? What do we need to do? Because I'm not comfortable coming in here, and by the time we get to that point, we cannot get to 2029 and be operating a deficit. We owe it to the community and to our students to get that figured out. And so that's, over the next few years, obviously, the next 5 weeks, hopefully a lot will change.
That's 2 budget cycles. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know what's going to happen 3 weeks from now. So, I mean, it makes it challenging, to Ms. Roberts' point. It's such a guessing game until you know what happens with the funding. So.
Yeah. The biggest thing is we can project pretty clearly where our expenses are going. We have a good handle on expenses. We can say, okay, here's what our district needs. When you start to match that up to just, okay, what are we bringing in? That's where we really have to look and say, okay, what's next? How do we get the funding that we need? Go from there. Any other thoughts or questions that I can help explain? Just to reiterate, we obviously will not be moving, we will not be transferring anything. At the earliest, it would be the June 23rd board meeting that we would come back with some transfer proposals. At this point, we're not transferring anything, so I don't want to set off those alarms yet, but at this point, that's where it ties to that capital plan.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Roberts, thank you for the 5-year forecast report in detail. Appreciate it very much. Moves us to closing items. I'm sorry. I need to entertain a motion to approve the May 2025 5-year forecast assumptions and notes. Been moved by Mr. Smelter. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hoffman. Question. I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Smeltzer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kramer?
Yes, motion passed unanimous. Okay. Now we move on to the closing items. Reminders, our next board meeting will be Monday, June 9th, 7 p.m. at the district office conference room. Turns us then to adjournment. Entertain a motion to adjourn, please. Been moved by Mrs. Johns. I'll second that question. Question, turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman? Yes. Mr. Smeltzer?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous. Board meeting is